Peaceful sleep, sleeping well, is a passive process. And you can find proof just by asking anyone you know who sleeps really well what they do to sleep, and they will spill the secret. They will shrug and go, I don't know. The flip side of this, what we can learn from this understanding, is that insomnia, when we're not sleeping well, is an active process, a process that requires effort. It is not a disorder or something that afflicts us from the outside. It is actually an active process that we are maintaining. This is a paradox, but it's not the number one paradox. That number one paradox is actually hidden within the paradox of activity and insomnia. Much in this episode that I will hope to uncover with you so that you find yourself where you want to be, which is a place of peaceful sleep and peace of mind. Let's take a look. Hi there, I'm Daniel, a sleep physician turned sleep coach and creator of the Sleep Coach School, in which we help driven, health-conscious, ambitious individuals like yourself who can figure out anything in life, but not sleep, it seems, arrive where you want to be, which is a place of peaceful sleep and peace of mind. And today we have a new teaching, a new take on truths we already know that I hope will be really practical for you. And quick backstory, just the other day I was driving with my wife and she was creating content for Instagram and she was saying something like, oh, sleep is a passive process. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And then just, my mind just created like the following sentence, which is insomnia is an active process. And I thought these became kind of two very nice poles, if you will, sort of like the North Pole has its South Pole. Like sleep is a passive process, insomnia is an active process. And I thought we could really learn from this in a practical way that will help you, I hope. So what we're going to do in this class is we're going to talk about these two poles and how to use these two poles to navigate out of insomnia, and then look at what I think is actually the number one paradox. One of the most paradoxical things I've come across in our space, and I really want to share it with you because I think it can be really illuminating. So going back into these two poles, sleep is a passive process. It is involuntary. It is automatic. It is this physiological process that just happens when we're not trying to make it happen. And again, ask anyone who sleeps well, and you'll get that answer. You'll see that they're not trying to sleep. They're not doing anything. It just happens. And the flip side of that, the flip, kind of like the pole, the understanding that's given to us when we're understanding that sleep is passive, is that struggling with sleep, not sleeping well, not seeing much sleep happen, it is an active process. And this is paradoxical because that's not how we experience things when we struggle with insomnia. Our experience is that something has happened, something has gone wrong, our brain has broken, our sleep system is damaged, something isn't functioning the way it's supposed to, and that is afflicting us. It's affecting us. It's making us not sleep. That is our experience. But in reality, what's happening is that we have started to think, for some reason, we had this kind of like one moment typically when we start to think, oh no, I'm not sleeping enough. This shouldn't be happening. And that leads us to start trying to control sleep, to do things, to actively pursue sleep and achieve sleep. And paradoxically, that is actually what insomnia comes from. So again, insomnia is not a disorder or something that afflicts us. It is an active struggle where we fight an invisible enemy, as one of our guests so nicely put it. We fight this invisible enemy, which is actually wakefulness. The invisible enemy is wakefulness. The invisible enemy is not sleeping or being awake at night. And although we can outrun or defeat a tangible enemy or a threat, that doesn't happen when it is this invisible, intangible, perceived threat. In fact, the more we try to outrun it, the more it just seems like there is a real threat that we need to outrun, and that keeps us in a struggle. Insomnia actually cannot exist without us actively trying to prevent sleepless nights. And another paradox here is just that one, that it typically starts with one or a couple of nights of little sleep, and then we think, oh no, I have to prevent another night of little sleep. And our attempt to prevent ourselves from not sleeping creates a third night of little sleep. And our attempts to prevent the third night creates the fourth night, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole process, which can be years, decades of insomnia, all come from our attempts to prevent that first sleepless night. Now, these attempts to prevent sleepless nights, which we call efforts or sleep efforts, can be classified, if you will, into three types. And I think these can be helpful to know about, just for general understanding. One type of effort is the tangible effort, where we use something that can be touched, felt, and we hope that that will make us sleep. And this is, for example, the pill, the supplement, or a weighted blanket, or a sound machine, something like that we hope will make us sleep. That is what we call a tangible effort. Then we have the semi-tangible effort, where there is something kind of like an element of something we can touch and feel, like yoga. We have the yoga mat, for example, but we're not hoping that the yoga mat will make us sleep. It's more the activity of yoga we hope will soothe, calm us down so that we will sleep, or deep breathing and activity that we hope will make us sleep, or exercise. These are the semi-tangible efforts. And then we have the most sneaky one, which is the intangible effort, which is when we're trying to use mind control, if you will. We're essentially trying to think of something positive, or think of something soothing, think of nothing at all. We're trying to have a blank mind, or we're just trying to like use willpower to sleep, just like lying there with eyes closed and willing ourselves to sleep. This is something that not necessarily can be observed. Nobody can see us do this, but it's happening inside us. This is like intangible effort. And insomnia is driven by one of these, or many of these often, efforts to achieve sleep. Now that we know this, we know again that sleep is a passive process, insomnia is an active process. The question becomes, okay, what is practical here? How does this help us? Let's look at this now. Let's see how we can navigate our way out of the struggle using these two poles. And the way we do that is actually by having a follow-up question to any question we have about our sleep and about insomnia, such as this one. Should I exercise more to build sleep drive, to make myself sleepy and tired so that I sleep? Right? Very common question. Should I exercise more because I've had trouble sleeping? Then, when we have that question, we want to like ask ourselves a question about that question, which is, if I exercise more in this way, would I be going towards more action and activity, or less action and more passivity, right? And when we see our original question that way, we can see that we're actually on our way to more activity. We are trying to exercise more to achieve more sleep drive, to achieve more sleep. We're on our way to maintain the struggle or even intensify the struggle, right? So we see that with this intent is not helpful to exercise more. Let's look at another question. Do I need to stay awake until I'm super sleepy, until my eyes are droopy? Do I need to like push myself to be awake till I'm really sleepy so that I can sleep? Does this sound to us as if we're becoming more passive or more active? Clearly, again, it sounds like we are becoming more active. We're trying to do something to achieve sleep. And we're kind of somehow navigating towards the more like activity pole, the effort pole, which keeps insomnia going, when we want to navigate towards the passivity pole, like doing less, right? How about this one? Should I stop tracking sleep? Should I just stop tracking sleep and monitoring sleep and keeping so much attention directed towards sleep? This sounds, when we read it, as if we're actually moving towards passivity. We're doing less. We're removing effort. Sounds very nice. Now, of course, the full sentence could be, should I stop tracking sleep so that I sleep more, so that I achieve more sleep? Then that's a little bit more nuanced and tricky. But you get the picture here, right? What we want to do is use the like activity passivity poles to guide us to where we want to be. Now, when we use the word passivity, it can have almost like a negative connotation, that we're passive, we're lazy, we're uninspired, we're not doing anything. But remember, when I use the word passivity here, I only refer to our efforts to try to control sleep, right? That's all I refer to. You can, of course, actively learn. You can, read books, tune into our channel, join our courses. And I think the one time where like some effort is actually helpful is just to learn, and again, the learning is the intent is not to try to sleep, but there is some activity involved in learning. I think that's really helpful. And other than that, in your life in general, you can be very active, of course, right? Passivity doesn't mean that you have to be passive in general in life. It only refers to these efforts to try to have control, right? So you can, of course, have a very active life. Do anything you want to do. Now, with this in mind, it is time to look at something that is so paradoxical, I think. But I hope I can share very clearly so you see the paradox and see what we can learn from it. And what I'll ask you to do here is imagine that we have a friend. We have a friend, and they've had insomnia. They have struggled with sleep. And little by little, they have really become withdrawn. It has gotten to a point where they're really isolated. In fact, they're housebound. They never leave the house. They have food delivered to their house. And the reason they do this is that anything seems like it could be a potential threat to them. Just leaving the house, they think, could lead them to become triggered, agitated, nervous, and eventually that could lead them to not sleeping. So they're staying at home all the time, not interacting with anybody, very withdrawn. Are they active or passive? Are they active or passive? Is this an active or passive way? Well, here's the paradox. Optically, when you kind of like think about this person or observe this person, look at this person, it seems like they're very passive. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting on a couch at home most of the day, not doing anything, right? But in reality, the entire life in this example has become one big avoidance effort. Remember, efforts are not only active, if you will, or like doing things, but not doing thing, removing something in an attempt to achieve sleep is also an effort. This is an avoidance effort. So our friend is essentially living one big effort. Their entire life has become about avoiding anything that could impact their sleep, right? So this is one big avoidance effort, and that's why they're still struggling. And now there's even more here. So when this person tells us that they've actually heard that engaging with life, being more active is helpful, and they're doing that, they're little by little venturing out, meeting a friend, going for a walk, going to a cafe, something like that, and they're telling us that, I actually find that I'm sleeping easier. Does that not mean that they became more active and that was helpful, which would contradict everything we've been talking about here? Again, the answer becomes no. Optically, it can look like they're more active, but from the perspective of trying to control their sleep and manage their sleep, they have actually become more passive. They have started to let go of these avoidance efforts. And it again highlights that it is this like passive approach when it comes to our inner landscape and sleep that leads where we want to be. So in summary, we have seen sleep is a passive process. Insomnia is an active process. And let these poles guide you to where you want to be, which is, of course, a place of peaceful sleep and peace of mind. As always, let me know in the comments how this sounded to you, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you took a ton of value away from the video that you just watched. But if you have been watching for a long time and you're still not at that place of peaceful sleep and peace of mind, maybe it's time for something new. And I say this because every so often, a student in our Insomnia Immunity program tells me, Daniel, I had been tuning in for 2 years and I only decided to join now, and I don't know why I waited so long because this is exactly what I needed. The thing is that our free content can be all you need. It can lead to where you want to be. And this is, of course, why we share everything freely. But often we need a little bit more than that. Support, community, guidance, discussion, this course, and you can find this in our Insomnia Immunity Program. You can find it in bedtime as well. So if you've been tuning in for a long time, and you think it's time for something new, then check out these options on our website, thesleepcoachschool.com. And if you decide this is the time to join, then we can't wait to see you on the other side.